The importance of understanding al-mal al-halal. It is so important to consume halal money. We should believe as Muslims that we are putting our spirituality at risk by consuming haram money. We shouldn't be taken by greed that I want to be more wealthier, I want to be more, and I put my family through haram. My house is from haram. How much haram are we surrounded with? Due to all the greed, we just want more. People want a bigger house, more cars, more this, and it's all due to greed. Because many people have more than enough. And we don't take haram into consideration. And haram does affect their spirituality. A lot of the times when we talk about our kids, we just think about it, you know what? I have to make sure their identity is strong. Like, have we thought by giving them haram food and haram money that affects their spirituality? Does that cross our minds of how serious this is? And we really have to take that. If Quraysh took this serious, why not us? And subhanAllah, this is why you found so much barakah in early Islam, because they took this very seriously. When An-Nu'man, radiyallahu anhu, An-Nu'man, a simple man, and he's among the tabi'een, An-Nu'man, he passes by a garden and he finds a fruit. He consumes part of the fruit and then realizes that this consumption was forbidden. He should have never ate this fruit. And then he asks for the landlord, wanting to seek his forgiveness or her forgiveness. And then he is informed that the landlord lives a few days away. And Nu'man takes it upon himself, he prepares himself, and he travels for a few days just to seek forgiveness for eating part of a fruit. Even less than half. But he knew it was wrong. And he travels all the way. And he meets the landlord. And he tells him, listen, I ate this mistakenly and I regret. Is there anything I can do? He says, okay. Yes, you can do something. He says, what? He said, I want you to marry my daughter. He said, okay, that's good. But he said, you have to know that my daughter is blind, deaf, mute, and paralyzed. And Nu'man, rahimahullah, then says, then I realize that this may be a fitna for me until I die. Should I accept and move on with all of these challenges? Or should I just suffer the consequences of consuming haram? How do I move forward? Like, regardless of where I go, I'm going to struggle. And he comes the next day and he accepts to marry this lady. And they're preparing for the wedding, and khalas, it's time for him to walk into the house, and he finds her and he says, Assalamu alaikum, and then she responds, Wa alaikum assalam. He says, so I realized she's not mute and she's not deaf. And then she got up and greeted me, so I knew she wasn't blind nor paralyzed. So I told her, what was your father saying? I've been living in misery for a few days. Your father just told me everything that I didn't want to hear. And he said, Wallahi, there was no one more beautiful than her. And then she then replied to Nu'man. She said, well, my dad was telling you that my feet are paralyzed, for I have never walked to haram. I have never touched haram. I have never engaged in haram. From that family, and Nu'man and this blessed lady, Abu Hanifa was their child. From an apple, this relationship, or from a fruit. This relationship began with someone consuming a fruit and regretted. And from them came Abu Hanifa to Nu'man, a great scholar that we all remember and talk about, and of course considered to be one of the greatest ulama in our Islamic history. So we shouldn't underestimate the effectiveness of haram consumption. Be very careful, and we should eliminate this idea of continuous growth of wealth, regardless of where it's coming and how we're engaging in it. May Allah protect us all. Number 3, some people may think for themselves that the solution was very simple. Number 1, it took them 3 days. And when the emotions are high, it is very difficult to solve a problem. We shouldn't think that this was an easy matter to address. It took them 3 days and they had no answers and everything was impossible. But the Prophet ﷺ, due to his sincere intentions, he was able to solve it. So the Prophet ﷺ stood out amongst his people from a very young age. Number 4, the people were convinced. People have to be socially engaged. We can't have people leading our communities that don't know our social problems, that don't know how to solve them. Why were they happy that Rasulullah came out? Because they knew that the Prophet ﷺ understood their social norms, understood their challenges, understood their tribal alliances. This is not easy. And you cannot do that unless you're engaged in the community. And this is why when you see governments around the world, they're not relevant. Why? Because they don't understand the struggles of their communities. And I think that many people that also lead Muslim communities are not relevant because they don't understand the challenges of their community. So we have to take this very seriously, that when we take on a responsibility, am I in touch with my community? Do I understand their challenges? Am I willing to embrace their challenges? And am I willing to find ways to address them? Or do I come up with my own conclusions? So the Prophet ﷺ was socially enriched and he understood the communal challenges in Quraysh, and this is why they were happy that Rasulullah ﷺ was there. Subhanallah. Number 5, they were excited that Rasulullah ﷺ showed up, not due to his wealth. Normally, Qurayshis would only give such position to people of wealth. This is why you have some people that just have money, but do not have a sound process of thinking, don't know how to solve problems, but just because they have wealth, they are given position. This is how Qurayshis gave people position. But when it came to this problem, this conflict, they were happy with Rasulullah, even though Rasulullah was the most poor. Even though Rasulullah was an orphan. Even though the Prophet ﷺ did not have the strongest tribal alliances. Why was he special? Because of his moral character. They knew that Rasulullah would not lie. And this is why they said, As-Sadiqul Amin. People can always disagree with you and I, but can they say about us that we are truthful and honest? That is more than enough. So even when we're talking to people about different conflicts and issues, we have to keep our moral ground. We have to know what we stand for as Muslims. And we are willing to say whatever it takes to preserve what we have stood for all these years. So the Prophet ﷺ was honored and respected, and they were excited to give him this role. Why? Because he ﷺ was called As-Sadiqul Amin, and we need to be known in our communities to be people that are truthful and honest. We should never lie. We should never betray the trust. We should never cheat. We should never prefer this person over this. We should never allow our emotional connection to affect our conclusions and how we make decisions. When people come and they ask you to resolve their conflict, do you go in with your emotions, sometimes emotional biases, and you go about these matters and everything is solved internally but you're just waiting to say it? Or do you go in with so much honesty and knowing that this is an amana? Rasulullah was a person of amana sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.